Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here is your host, Dr. Frances Richards.
What happens in Vegas goes all over the world on Black Entrepreneur Experience, episode number 118. Thank you for joining us as we elevate the Black entrepreneur experience by interviewing CEOs, thought leaders, innovative thinkers, and Black entrepreneurs across the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frances Richards, and today we have with us Barrett LaRoda. He's an intellectual property expert with industry expertise in developing and executing business strategies. Now that includes contract negotiations, strategy alliances, business development, and finances with a specialization in private-public sector joint ventures. Hi, Barrett. How are you?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm perfect. You know what? I have given our audience a very brief bio about you. I've done some research, and you have a pretty impressive bio. Why don't you share with us what you'd like us to know about you and your company and the affiliations of companies that you're involved in?
Right. So let me just start off by talking about the CBD company, Ayurvedic Pharmaceuticals, and how I got into this business. I really got into this business because it allowed my creativity, imagination, and the rest of my entrepreneurial skills to be utilized to the fullest. And for example, I'll just tell you a little brief background of my high school and college years. I was a student athlete for most of my life, playing basketball mostly. And just last year, I won the championship in the Chatsworth Celebrity Basketball League, with some of my teammates being former NBA players Katina Mobley and Al Harrington, some artists like Lil Fizz, and actors like Tyron Turner. But I bring that up because in November, I had shoulder surgery with the Team USA water polo doctor, and he prescribed me these prescription drugs, which I never really been comfortable taking. And that decision really stemmed from my parents' upbringing of using holistic remedies as an outlet to heal. And so I always grew up with swamis and Tibetan monks and yogis and everything of that nature, always coming to visit our house. And whether they were cooking up natural concoctions in the kitchen or outside the old-fashioned way to relieve headaches, muscle pains, or even like symptoms of a stroke, I found that it worked. So I strongly believe that the combination of my upbringing as well as the wellness and remedies as a substitute for prescription drugs really made me decide that this business venture was right for me. And now I'm just looking to incorporate my youthful and motivated approach to wellness, merging the two generations.
And what is your involvement with the company that you're with now?
So right now I'm the president, and I do really everything. I'll do whatever it takes to make sure the business is successful. And so whether that's on-ground marketing, whether that's social media marketing, whether that's going out to talk to different PPMs for potential investors or clients, it's a really broad spectrum of what one person can just do.
One of the things that you shared about when you had gone to the doctor and they had prescribed the medicine to you.
Right.
Did you take that medicine?
Yeah, so I took one pill just because the pain was so excruciating, and that was hydrocodone. But the side effects just changed me. I was spinning, throwing up. It was really awful. And since I was able to use a holistic remedy as a substitute for that, I knew that I just didn't want to be involved in that type of, have that feeling ever again. It was just tragic.
And so from your injury, Barrett, did you go back into playing basketball, or did you?
I'm actually right now in the rehabilitation process. So I'm doing a lot of physical therapy, making sure that I have full range of motion. And I work with some of the best physical therapists, and I had a really great surgeon who was tremendous. But I'll be able to participate probably around the summer. So about May or June, I'll be back to normal.
And you did have the shoulder surgery?
In November, yeah.
Okay. And what was the healing process like for that?
A lot of CBD, because I had to fight over the pain and kind of get used to not being able to use my arm, which was kind of a tough task because I'm right-handed. So a lot of my motions I had to learn with my left, which was really challenging. But I think the biggest deal was the pain mediation, learning how to use CBD the right way and not taking any of the prescription opioids that were given.
Talk about the entrance into that industry, because there's a lot of information out there about various individuals wanting to go into that industry,
Right.
Cannabis versus CBD, and the entrance into it. Is the door closed?
Well, no. So the process of me creating this really began with my family. So my dad, he's the chairman of the company. My uncles, John Sally is the COO, Anthony Francis is the CFO, and Earl Bryan is the CEO. And I also recruited my friends as sales representatives. So I've always believed that it's important to be surrounded with people with the same type of energy, because whatever you put out into the world, you'll get in return. And so my team and I are alike in a sense that we're all ambitious and smart entrepreneurs that we want to make a positive impact in the wealth and wellness community, while breaking the boundaries as being one of the only 4% of African American business owners in this cannabis industry.
And why do you think that it's only 4% in the industry?
I think a lot of it has to do with being knowledgeable in the subject and going into an untapped market. I think that a lot of people are kind of scared to venture into a brand new market, but it's new to everyone, which is something that a lot of people don't understand or don't really know how to cycle into that venture. And I think that's one of the main things that people should really try to pursue, is things that are a little risk-taking. You have to be able to dive into that.
Well, what has been very interesting in terms of the research that I've done, and that's why I like to get experts on, or individuals that are in the field. And so it's kind of twofold before I talk about the research or that I've done on that. I wanted to ask you, tell me the state that you guys are operating out of.
Right. We're operating out of Palm Desert, so in California.
Okay. And so there's a group that's in Oakland, California, and their name escaped me, and I'll put it in the show notes later on, that what they're doing is wanting more individuals that look like us to get into cannabis and CBD, because that's when I was talking about the door being closed. Now, in the state of Nevada, from my understanding, to gain entrance into that market and a little bit of research in Michigan, it's taking upwards of $100,000 plus to get into the business. Is that information correct or not correct?
Yeah, I believe that it's correct. It's just a lot of it has to do with the investing money, because if you don't have a product to sell, or you don't have the resources to be able to get your product to the different locations that you want to go to, you're not going to be able to do anything. So I think a lot of it has to do with getting your PPMs and personal money, pooling them together to be able to venture out into the markets and sell your product. So I think that has a lot to do with what you're talking about, that people just haven't done that. They need to pool their resources and integrate into this primarily white dominant company.
Barrett, what was that aha moment that you knew that this business venture was going to be successful?
That aha moment. Well, for me, I think that really came from seeing the results with my grandma's knee. And so to give you a quick background of my grandma, I call her Nanny, which means grandma in Hindi. But she's one of the sweetest people you ever meet, extremely witty. And she'll tell you straight up if she likes something, and she doesn't have a filter, which I love. But I say that because she's also extremely religious. So anything taboo, which in this case is cannabis, is an absolute no. And unfortunately, her chronic knee pain got to a point where she wasn't able to walk. So I had her use our CBD and set up kind of like a regimen, so that way she's able to routinely use it throughout the week. And within a couple weeks, she was able to go on her walks throughout the neighborhood. And mind you, we live on a pretty decent sized hill. So the fact that she's able to walk up and down that hill is a real testament that this stuff isn't a gimmick. Like it actually works. And that's kind of when I knew that we had something.
So we're trying to visualize this, the product that you gave your grandma. Was it in a food form? Was it an oil? Was it, and just talk about the different ways that you can actually ingest the cannabis.
Right. So CBD, there's a couple forms you can take. There's a topical cream. There's also a liquid form that you can put under your tongue. And so it was kind of a combination of the two. And there's also like a vape, if you know what that is, where you smoke the particles. So it was just the topical and the oils that we gave her. And throughout the week, whenever she had inflammation or any type of soreness, we rubbed it on her knee. And then whenever she needed to ingest it, we gave it under her tongue, with food, water, because it has terpenes to change the way that it tastes. And so the way that we use CBD, there isn't really a guideline based on how you should take it. Whereas with prescription drugs, it says take 2, between 6 hours. This is when she feels the pain, she can take it. And seeing the benefits that it actually worked for someone of her age, it really just showed how extensive the research and the amount of time that we put into the product paid off.
How old is your grandma?
Around 87.
Okay. Now, what is grandma saying about the product?
It's starting to change her mind. So, cannabis always had a negative stigma when it comes to the word, but because we're able to tell her that the CBD has no psychoactive effects, it really changed her perception on what cannabis was, not just the negative connotation that came along with it.
Tell us, Barrett, what advice did someone tell you that you wish you had followed before?
See, that's kind of a hard one because I'm only 23. So I don't think I've gotten that far yet because my parents have always instilled in me, if you don't know the topic or you're not sure on a certain particular subject, to do your own research. And I've always had a great pool of resources behind me that if I was ever in that sense of not that I needed reassurance, I could always go to them and get the answer that I needed because they were more than likely experienced on the subject.
And how did you convince your family that this was the business that they should go into, with you being 23 years old? And I'm assuming some of the names that you mentioned, they're quite older.
Right. Yeah, so a lot of it stemmed from my family has always been in entertainment. My pops has been in the top tier of entertainment, specifically in music and intellectual property, for the last 30 years. And so me telling him that this is the next groundbreaking business, he kind of took an appeal to it, or at least an interest. And then when I told him that it's so new, literally within the last 18 months, that was kind of the, okay, let me do my research on it. So my dad started doing his research, and because he's more of the older generation, he's able to see past what I'm thinking of, which is more the millennials and that sort of generation. And the two of us are able to bridge the gap between the two. And so I think that the platform that we have now, which is filled with athletes, actors, actresses, everybody to your regular Joe, is able to show that this is a universal product and that it's a global language, sort of like music, which is our background.
Tell us about your education going to college. Is it a direct correlation? Did you major in business or biology or anything that has given you that edge into the industry?
Right. Yeah. So right now I'm still in school and I'm getting my degree in entrepreneurship, which is now it's kind of like the modern twist on business, but it allows me to venture into stuff like CBD, cannabis, hemp. If I still want to, music, entertainment, all those aspects, which doesn't limit me to, financial, marketing, analytics, macroeconomics. And I think that's the real edge that's given me the jump over some of the individuals who have just studied, business or went into the field of marketing.
Tell us about when did you start your company?
We started about a year ago and hit the ground running the second we decided that this is the real business that we wanted to invest all of our time and our resources in. And so from a year up until now, we've gotten leaps of progress, which is something that I think it's pretty hard to come by. And one of the biggest accomplishments that we had was signing that deal with the Bakersfield LLC and 7-Eleven agreement that sells our products throughout 5,000 stores between California, Nevada, Texas, and Arizona.
And was that based on your negotiation skills?
Exactly. Yeah. A lot of it has to do with making sure that they see the results and they can see the potential investment is a greater reward than it is a risk.
That's pretty phenomenal. Tell me about your thought process that's really innovative thinking, and
right.
What made you go after the 7-Elevens?
I think mass distribution, a lot of it has to deal with social media marketing, and that's in itself a community on its own. So if you're able to appeal to the masses, it's only a matter of time before everybody else starts to catch on to this sort of the new thing that's going around. And me being a millennial, I think that's my strong point. I'm able to capitalize on certain instances or certain situations that would make it seem as though this is the thing to get right now. And so 7-Eleven and the LLCs were able to give me the resources I needed to get my product into those type of situations where the mass could find a designated location to pick them up.
Barrett, tell us a problem that exists in the world today that you'd like to solve.
Okay, so I think a problem that's huge is the prescription drug and opioid addiction, which is something that I at least had an experience dealing with, whereas I had to take a prescription drug for my shoulder pain. But I think that it's something that we can really benefit off of because, growing up I went to a private school. All the parties, didn't matter where it was, there was always kids selling or either taking pills, which they probably got from their parents, but it was clear that it was an unfortunately really addicting situation for them. So I know that it's something that as a society we have to be aware of and do something about. And as a matter of fact, the opioid and prescription drugs addiction has nothing to do with your race, age, or religion. It can happen to anybody. And it's a disease that can be treated. And our company is able to utilize that by holding a conference in Florida that attacks the addiction head on by using cannabis as a recovery supplement. And so we came up with a way to incorporate the city of Newport Richey, Florida, to conduct the first ever opioid conference, which will be called the annual 1787 SunWest Health Wellness Music Fair. That will be held on August 18th through the 20th of this year.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that information.
Thank you.
So tell me, Barrett, what you are most grateful for now in your life.
I think what I'm most grateful for would be the relationship that I have with my family and how involving most of my time into this business and school hasn't diminished the connection I have with them, which is something that's really hard to come by because most people, if you're really invested in one, you don't really get to have the other, which is something I find extremely common in this field. And it's kind of hard because you're really setting yourself up for your family's future. However, you're missing a lot of the present and the now if you're so invested within it. And I think that that's one of the main reasons that I have to thank my dad, because he's always been the person to incorporate me in business ventures at such a young age that now I know how to do that. And I'm able to do that with my family, which is just something I can never repay him for.
Now, are you an only child or do you have other siblings?
I have an older sister and I have a younger brother. And so my older sister, you've probably heard of her actually. She was the 2017 Miss India America winner, and she was the first winner in the last 50 years to be biracial, being half black and half East Indian.
Oh, congratulations. Is she in the industry, or because of the title or what she being in the pageant, can she be involved in that or no? Oh, yeah. So cannabis, CBD specifically, I think is global, and it doesn't really isolate a certain group, but her main focus right now is she's in medical school to become a children's pediatrician. And so that's her main focus, but she helps with everything from the day-to-day work to, sending her a document to say, could you go over this and see if this aligns with what we're trying to do. So I think the whole family together is really involved and really invested in this. And what about your younger brother? Is he too young?
Well, yeah. So my younger brother's in 8th grade, but he's been a pretty big help too, because when it comes to sorting, when we get our shipments in, he'll at least go through the different inventories and make sure that each of them align with how many that they said they brought us, or he'll separate them by which terpenes are flavoring the oils. So I think if he has a more understanding of what cannabis is, not talking about the THC side of it, it's not that much of a shock to him when he hears all these scary stories about cannabis, but really a lot of it has to do with doing your own research, because CBD in itself is less scary and less potentially threatening than the prescription drugs that, let's say, a pharmaceutical company like CVS or somebody would give them to get over a certain type of pain.
Let's kind of back up a little bit. You talked about the first ever conference, August 18th to the 20th in Florida. And I have a couple of questions about that. Who is the conference open to and for?
So the conference is a health and wellness fair, which is actually what my dad specialized in, which is putting on large-scale concerts of a minimum of about 10,000 people. And so the city of Newport Richey, he's working with to incorporate a way of using CBD, which is our specific brand, to be an exit drug for the people who are on opioids and are abusing prescription drugs, being that it's a transition into getting over the brutal addiction process.
And then why did you guys pick Florida?
Well, Florida is the opioid capital, so they have the most outbreaks in prescription drug abuse. And the fact that the city of Newport Richey was so open to throwing this festival and holding a benefit to help the people who are really suffering with this and the families that are suffering with it overcome that step, I think that's the main focus on why that was the particular city that we picked, or the state.
And it's open to anyone to attend?
Yes. Yeah, it's a music festival. But the primary focus will be using CBD as the exit drug and the awareness of it to get over the prescription drug abuse.
That was very educational. I don't know why I thought that it was on the East Coast with the most addiction. So thanks for clarifying that for us.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
What can you do daily to be better?
Right. So I have a few habits, actually. One is sleep. So I used to think that sleep was kind of diminishing your ability to get the most out of the hours in the day and put those hours into your business. But then I realized that through health is wealth. And if you don't sleep, you're not able to perform to your fullest potential. And a lot of it's also meditation that comes along with finding yourself the right answers, because a lot of the times when you're stuck in looking over the same exact, let's say document for this instance, you're really not able to think or see clearly as to what the next step is. And I think if you're able to have a clear mind and clear conscience, you're able to really get the best possible result you can. And also another thing is always having a strong faith in God, because prayer and being grateful is the key to a lot of my endeavors. And I would say that never being afraid to ask questions is also something that I've been brought and taught since I was about 5 years old, which is something that people usually assume as being a bad thing. But it's okay to not know everything, and it's actually important to read and ask questions so that way you can be knowledgeable on the subject in the future.
We can learn from successful entrepreneurs and from them and from their brand. Tell us a brand or a business that is dominating that you admire and why.
To be honest, I really admire the way that Ayurvedic Pharmaceuticals is coming up, specifically with what the brand stands for, which is we have created a health and wellness brand that thoroughly tests our products, which is something that not all CBD companies are required to do, and they usually don't. But us specifically, we do. We have a strong mitigation for testing, and it strives to help people that suffer from addiction, and we're breaking boundaries by inspiring minorities to start their own businesses and dominate any industry that they're passionate about. And I also love the fact that I work with my family, and sometimes there's a stigma of not mixing business with family, but I think in the right circumstances and in the right aspect of how you do it, it's probably the most beautiful thing you can do, because you have people with like minds benefiting each other and pushing you to the next step.
Barrett, who are your top 2 influencers in life, and what lessons do they teach you?
My top 2 influencers, one is definitely my sister. And I say that because her dedication is just impeccable. As going through medical school, you see the amount of studying and research that goes into it, and it's ridiculous. It's something that it's kind of hard for me, but the fact that I can see her do it, and that the fact that she's my sister, I know that it's attainable. And going into a pageant, being the only biracial candidate, especially being half black, it kind of was a big leap to take. And the fact that it was her first ever pageant and to win unanimously was just something that I really couldn't put into words how I felt.
How did that change her life?
I think her confidence skyrocketed after that moment. Really, anything she put her mind to, she was really able to manifest it. And so she got into every school that she applied to, which is something that I really can't say that it's just amazing how that's able to happen just through really putting it out there, speaking it into existence.
Barrett, if someone wrote a book about you today, what would they learn about you?
If someone wrote a book about me today, I think that they would learn that everybody works on their own time, and that just because you may feel like you're ahead or you're working too slow, that everybody's in their own time zone. Like California is 3 hours behind New York, but that doesn't mean that New York's ahead. And that's one of the main things that I really took from being a young entrepreneur, and really understanding that a lot of people may look at you different because you're young, or a lot of people may look at you different because you're older. But if you have a certain drive and you have a certain charisma appeal, that you're pretty much able to stand on your own 2 feet. And that's what I really want to get that point across.
What's a technology tool or a technology platform that is a must-have for you in managing your business day to day?
Right. I think that one of the most important aspects of technology is social media. That in itself is a whole, and it allows for global communication instantaneously. And our company, Ayurvedic Pharmaceuticals, is really thankful to have one of our team leaders, Malik, who is an expert in marketing that has to deal with on-ground social media, any form of communicating to the masses directly and finding an appeal that suits them and driving that to specific product. So I think that's one of the main tools people really have to start to utilize and implement if they want to see skyrocketing success.
Barrett, I want you to talk to the person in our audience and they're listening to you and they're saying, wow, I'm really impressed with this 23-year-old CEO. I don't have that social capital that you have.
Right.
That sphere of influence that you have. What advice would you give them?
I think one advice I would give them is to not be afraid of failure. I think one of the things a lot of people do is kind of not take that risk or take that jump that could be the next step into finding success. You know, like say you start a company and you're digging for oil and you're just about to break oil, but you stop because you think you've been doing it for too long and you haven't seen any success. And so you sell your land to somebody else and they start digging for oil, and within that day, they end up striking oil. But it was really a lot because you stopped believing in yourself. And I think that's one of the main things that people have to do, especially in our community, is believe in yourself and find like-minded individuals to uplift each other.
It's really good. Give us 3 truths you've learned in life or business so far.
Well, my dad has always told me that cheap pays twice. And so that kind of means no taking shortcuts, even if it seemed like that's the best option, which is something that's kind of hard to do, but being patient, trusting the process, and putting in the time, it really makes all the difference. Looking at failures as a lesson rather than the end result, you know, like to just keep pursuing your dream and keep going, which is something that's really hard to do as well. But I think with the right people behind you and the right motivation, you'll find that prosperity is in the future. And to be present and not let egotistical energy get in the way, to always remain humble and make every day count.
What is the one impact, Barrett, you want this interview to give to our audience?
I think I want people to really understand that not everybody has to be at a particular point at a certain age. I think that it doesn't matter what age you are, you're able to transition that into benefiting the future. And I think a lot of it has to do with having the right mindset and being able to articulate yourself to anybody, whether that's Warren Buffett or whether that's your local investor or friend. I think you have to be able to have a communicable skill that translates into business.
We understand that your business is fairly young,
right?
A year old. Can you share with us, if this is applicable,
right?
What is the worst moment in business and what was your takeaway?
Well, I'll tell you something that my pops has always told me, and that's nothing beats a failure but a try. So in retrospect to that, a failure to one person might be success to another. And if they are able to use their mistakes to benefit their future experiences, I think that in itself is the greatest reward that can come from a risk or a failure.
So talk about your legacy. When it's all said and done, how do you want to be remembered?
I think I would want people to realize that it's really hard to manage your business along with getting your degree in school or vice versa, whether you're working for a company or you're trying to get your degree. And so I watch a lot of Shark Tank, and Mark Cuban has always said that it's hard to maintain the balance between school and business. If you do one, you have to quit the other. And I want to be the exception to that. I think I want to be able to have my business take off the way I'm perceiving it will, while finishing my schooling and getting my master's degree around the same time, and being probably having a conversation with them and telling them that it is possible. You don't have to quit one or do the other.
How much longer do you have before you finish your master's?
Well, first I have about 4 years to finish my degree in entrepreneurship. So I have 2 years to finish my degree in entrepreneurship and then another 2 years.
So you're doing a dual bachelor's and master's together?
Yes, exactly.
Thank you for that. What is the one word that would define who you are?
Determined. I think that has a lot to do with a person's character. And if you're determined to do something, in the end, you'll get the results you want. It's just a matter of time and patience and persistence, but determination will ultimately always succeed in the end.
And with you being an entrepreneurial school, tell
Right.
us, what book would you recommend to our audience and why?
That's a good question, actually, because I actually have two books that I would like to recommend if I can, because they kind of go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
So that being Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill and also Manifest Your Destiny by Wayne Dyer. And growing up, I've always seen these two books around the house since I was a kid. So I knew that my dad had multiple copies. And I probably picked up this book when I was around maybe 13 or 14 years old. And these books give you a clear understanding on how to condition your mind for success and achieve your goals in a real simple way. And mind you, I was about a freshman in high school when I first picked up this book.
Tell us a song title that would best describe you or your brand.
I think a song that would best represent our brand, Ayurvedic Pharmaceuticals, is We Are the World, which is a classic song with legends like Stevie Wonder, Diana Ross, Lionel Richie, and the list goes on. But this song really resonates with our brand because I believe that we're like, our company's like instruments being used to help others for the greater good, whether that's getting over the negative connotation that cannabis or weed has to really help benefit people that think there's only one particular direction to go in.
Talk about self-care and give us your tips and strategies for self-care.
For self-care, I think a lot of it has to do with the word Ayurvedic is actually one of the oldest words in the world. And it stems from having a balance of the mind, body, and spirit. And I think that having a healthy mind, body, and spirit really prolongs your future and creates a system in which you're at peace. And I think that's one of the main things people need to start understanding, is that having a healthy mind and body will keep you prosper and allow you to live a longer and healthier life.
Talk about your most memorable moment in life or business.
I think it has to be when we signed the agreement with the 7-Eleven distribution company, because it really showed that with persistence, you're really able to make your dreams a reality. And that's something that's unimaginable at one point when you really start to doubt yourself. But through determination, you'll see the other end of the tunnel. And that was one of the happiest moments, I think, was signing off the release forms for it.
Barrett, I cannot leave this interview without asking a very profound question.
Right.
Talk about capital. How did you get the capital to start your business?
A lot of the capital came from PPMs and personal money. So for people who don't know, PPMs are private placement memorandums. And so a lot of it has to do with showing what the ultimate goal will be, which is higher reward for less risk. And I think if you're able to articulate that and get your point across, I don't see how you're not able to really sell what you're trying to do. A lot of it has to do with being communicable and personable with people, but that was the main investment strategy.
So with PPMs, how is that different from angel investors?
Well, I believe angel investors, you have to seek out the investments, the finance owners, whereas we're going to specific people who have the resources and the capital to do it. They just need the right construction, the right structure, because this is friends and family that we're going to. So the fact that we're able to talk to them on a less business level, more personal, but showing them the end result, the ends justify the means, it really was able to tie into what I was trying to do.
I was talking to another young person that was looking to get into this industry in a totally different state. And
Right.
he had gone after PPMs, private investors, and a couple of them were pretty influential individuals that he had connected with. And what they had said, and I don't know if you can talk on this or if you've had this experience, and they had shared with him that they would invest, but they needed to be like kind of a silent or a ghost investor.
Yeah.
Because of other entities that they were involved in. They could not have it come out that they were actually investing in cannabis.
Right.
So if you could speak to that, because it's not just when you talked about the taboo from a spiritual perspective, it's a fine line, even in terms of employment. Individuals are taking cannabis, and if they are drug tested, and the laws between the state versus the federal.
Right. A lot of it has to do with having their CFO talk to them. I think you have to leave. Our CFO personally is really knowledgeable in that sense. So he's able to get the point across in a way that doesn't make it seem as though it's so controversial. And also the state we live in, California, I'm not sure what state that the individual you spoke to lived in, but I think a lot of it stems from knowing the regulations and knowing your local laws that are about to be passed and how this cannabis movement is actually progressing. So getting in front of the bend instead of running behind it is something that they should try to portray in a more appropriate manner, I should say, kind of making it seem as though that it's better to get in front of it before you're too left in the dust to get into that potential investment.
Barrett, if you conducted this interview, what is the one question that you would have asked yourself? And I'd like you to ask yourself the question and answer it.
Right. I'd say that I would ask, what makes my company different from the rest? Because there's a lot of CBD companies that are out there. And I'd say that our company is different from them because it's bigger than just us. Ayurvedic Pharmaceuticals is a minority-owned company that is built on integrity, impeccability, and evolving with our consumers. Our company has its own testing lab, which is also recognized as the first minority-owned testing site in Southern California, which is an accomplishment in its own, but we primarily focus on testing CBD as well, not just cannabis for the THC content, whether that's pesticides or what's in your soil. The CBD you intake in your body should be just as regulated as the cannabis itself. And not only is it an advocate for our community, but we as a whole are working to put an end to the abuse of prescription drugs, which, our team is also comprised of athletes, actors, actresses, business execs to your everyday Joe, which is something that I think it symbolizes unity and how it's universally something that can be talked amongst each other.
Thank you for that. Barrett, we've come to the part of our interview, and it's called Fun Facts Lightning Round.
Right.
And I'm going to give you a series of questions, and I'd like you to give me very quick answers. If there's something you desire not to answer, feel free to say pass. Are you ready for the Fun Facts Lightning Round?
Yeah, let's do it.
The last movie you saw?
The Us movie directed by Jordan Peele.
You relax doing what?
Taking CBD, the CBD droplets.
Your favorite singer or rapper?
That's a tough one. I love J. Cole and I love Prince, so both of those.
Your favorite dance song?
Blueface, Buzz Down, Tatiana.
What food you eat every week, no matter what?
That's a tough one because it's Chick-fil-A, but I can't eat it on Sundays. But Chick-fil-A is up there.
Your favorite month?
December. I love Christmas.
What is the best way? This is not a quick one. This is just for you to give individuals your handles, your contact information. What is the best way for our audience to connect with you and to support your business? And if they're not in California, can they still do business with you? And I'll let you take it over.
Right. So I think the best way to contact me is through Instagram, which is my first and last name, Barrett LaRoda, because that primarily, like I said before, is social media is the biggest way to connect with the masses on a global level instantaneously. And also through email. You can also email our representative Makeda at jasmineenterprise.com. So Makeda at jasminepr.com. And that's probably the best way if you're in a different state to set up any type of conversation, any sort of outlook that you need or that we can assist you on to make sure that your company gets its just means.
Barrett, thank you so much for spending time with us on Black Entrepreneur Experience. We are so proud of what you're doing, so thank you for joining us.
Wow, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.